before having a kid, I used to think like people were being a little over dramatic when they said like, "Oh, becoming a parent changed me." But honestly, like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
even the way I view my parents has changed. Like,
Hello and welcome to the Dad Dialogue podcast, the show where we talk about the successes and stresses of becoming a dad and being a dad. I am your host, Laurence. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Before I introduce today's guest, a couple of reminders. You can go follow us over on Instagram. It's at Dad Dialogue. Trying to engage with a little bit more content on there, so not just the podcast clips as well. So do go check it out. I would really appreciate that. You can also get in touch with me via daddialogue.co.uk. There's a sign-up form there if you'd like to be a guest, or you can just reach out, share your thoughts, your feedback about the show. I'd really appreciate hearing from you. So today's guest is Mike. Mike is based in America. He is a salesman. He's been married for just over 5 years now, recently celebrated his anniversary, and he has a 2-year-old daughter. In the episode, we talk about a few different things, like the development of his daughter, the different stages of her life, the terrible twos that he's currently experiencing. Maybe some of us can remember that if we're a little bit further along the parenting process. And Mike also shares the story of how he and his wife discovered that their daughter was allergic to peanuts in a slightly kind of traumatic story. I think it's really interesting. Definitely worth tuning in for, sticking around to listen to that one. I do just want to say one thing before we get into it. If you are an audio listener normally, if you're listening on one of the audio platforms, have a think to go and watch this one on YouTube, see the video, because Mike just has this incredibly infectious smile that when he's talking about his wife and his daughter, it's almost impossible to not just smile along with him. When I was editing this episode, just sat there on my computer, just found myself smiling along as I was watching it back and editing it. It's a really lovely thing to see. He's just got this beaming pride for his family as he talks about them. So do go check it out on YouTube if that is interesting and appealing to you. With all that being said, let's get into the conversation. Okay, so Mike, thanks so much for joining us for the Dad Dialogue podcast. Can you just start off by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your family?
yeah. Well, like you said, my name is Mike. I stay in the U.S. I'm from Dallas, Texas, to be exact. I'm a father of a 2-year-old. Terrible twos. I'm dealing with that right now. My wife and I, we just celebrated 5 years of marriage last weekend. Um, And yeah, I work in sales, beverage sales. I used to say beer sales, but now my company's selling beer, water, juice, everything, every beverage you can think of. So beverage sales, that's what I'm doing now. And I also have a podcast where we discuss, me and my co-host, we discuss sports such as basketball, American football, and I mean he's a fan of real football as well. I haven't got too much into it, and we talk about music as well, such as like hip hop and R&B. So
Awesome. Yeah, we can definitely pick up at the end. We can like get you to share with the listeners a little bit more about your podcast.
yeah,
Cool. So first of all, congratulations, 5 years
thank
married. I
you.
saw that on your Instagram as well. That's
Yeah,
awesome. It's always good to kind of like to reflect on those moments or those milestones. And
no,
5 years
yes,
is like, I think that was when I was like, me and my wife were like, wow, we're really married. We're not like
yeah,
newlyweds.
yeah,
5 years, man.
yeah. The newlywed phase is over now. It definitely does feel like okay, now we're the established married couple now. So yeah,
Exactly. So I want to talk a little bit about your job because I know, in sales,
hmm
I used to work in sales. I've known a lot of people in sales, and it's one of those jobs that you're kind of expected to kind of go the extra mile.
yeah,
Like, if you want to do well, if you want to like get the numbers and progress, like you've got to put in the work, and that's
yeah.
what, at least from my experience. How have you like balanced that with welcoming in your daughter to the world 2 years ago?
Oh man, I mean, like you said, it's pretty demanding. You're expected to go like the extra mile when you're
Mm.
because I sell to stores, so like little corner stores, gas stations. So I have about 90 stores altogether as far as like people I sell
Mm.
to. So it's definitely a balance of trying to. I mean, just remembering names is already is already a challenge. So so yeah, I mean, I try to when I get off of work, I just leave work to the side. Of course, there's going to be stuff that I have to work on when I'm at home, but I try to minimize as much because when I get home, I do want to spend time with my family. But yeah, I mean, it's selling is fun. Being a salesman is fun. It has its fun times. It has its aggravating times as well. But I try to leave all of that at work. Like when I'm frustrated at work, I try not to bring that at home with me. So
Mm.
yeah.
And have you been able to kind of manage your time in like the way that you wanted, like not doing like super long hours, or like were you able to adjust your hours,
Um,
or like do you feel like you're at home as much as you want to be?
I do feel like I would want to be at home more, a little bit more than I am right now. I feel like that's probably like any father who has to leave their
Mm.
family for a little bit. I feel like we could all relate to that. But yeah, my hours are a little bit longer. It's because I like to be done with everything. I don't
Yeah.
like I said, like I mentioned before, I don't like to bring it home and work on stuff at
Mm.
home. So I rather spend that extra time at work. That way, when I'm at home, I can just focus on my wife
Focus.
and my daughter. So yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, it feels like parents, like they kind of fall into the one or two categories.
hmm
Like you're either getting out as soon as you can, and
yeah,
then kind of fitting then extra bits of work here and there when you can, or I'm just going to leave it all at the door when we walk out. And I think yeah, both ways are definitely possible. Um, your wife's a teacher, right?
yes. My wife is a teacher. She's been teaching for 2 years now. So
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So similar time to when your daughter was born. Did she change career
Uh,
after your daughter was there?
I mean, it kind of lined up like that. That wasn't the plan, but yeah, yeah.
Okay.
She was pregnant at her job prior to that, and then made a
Mm.
career change while my daughter was still pretty young. So yeah,
Wow, that's impressive to kind of make that change. I know a lot of people are looking for the securities
yeah,
of like when you're having like a newborn around.
yeah.
Uh, how is it to like supporting like the family, supporting her, kind of in that process of making that career change?
I mean, it comes pretty easy. I mean, uh, like you say, you mentioned support from or security from a job. I will say, like her
Mm.
job prior to that wasn't the most secure. So I
Right.
was kind of like full on pushing her to go ahead and do
Okay.
this teaching thing, especially because it's something that she's wanted to do for years. And I think having a child for her put the battery in her back and was like, okay, let me go ahead and
Mm.
pursue that. And I was right there with her. I mean, there was a lot of studying she had to do, so I had to
Mm.
take more of the load of like making sure my daughter's not giving her stressing her out while
Mm.
she's trying to study for that. But yeah, we adjusted for sure.
That's awesome. I don't know if people like I after being a salesman, I actually studied to be a teacher as well, and I
Oh,
was a
really?
teacher for
Okay.
4 years.
Yeah,
So I don't know if people know kind of the degree you have to get. I assume it's probably similar all around the world. Like there are very high standards of
yeah,
like you got to put in a lot of work, like when you're training to be a teacher, and some of that the amount of like reflection, amount of reports you have to like write are just absolutely insane.
yeah,
Um, and I did mine a similar time when my firstborn was around. I would just like he would be awake from like I'd be up with him from like 4 a.m. just keeping an eye on him, doing all my reports and stuff.
hmm
It's yeah, it's an intense process, but
yeah,
I like how you said you put the battery in her back. Is that what you said?
yeah, yeah. Put a little battery in in her back. Yeah, a little extra
That's a really
motivation.
nice way to put it.
Yeah,
Yeah, like the baby kind of making that motivation is
yeah, for sure.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome to kind of bring that out of your family.
yeah. And I will say, I mean,
So
as far as sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I mean,
go for it.
having a baby kind of made me push me to go to sales. I was at I was at the current job before, but I was doing something else, and I was just while my wife was pregnant, I was kind of getting more aggressive with interviews, trying to get promoted. Actually, became a salesman a month before my daughter was born. So
Oh, okay.
like a month, like became a salesman August 1st, her birthday September 1st. So exactly a month
Oh,
apart.
okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah,
So was that like was that in response of like wanting to provide
yeah, definitely.
more?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
And wanted something more secure. I was hourly prior to that, so hours
Mm.
you really never know how that's gonna go. So now I have a more definitely more secure, so I can provide
Mm.
for my family.
Mm. So I'm guessing your daughter kind of goes to a daycare facility. during the week?
Currently, my mother-in-law watches her
Okay.
while we're both at work, which has been such a blessing. I mean,
Mm.
daycare over. I don't know how daycare is on your side, but daycare out here is very expensive. I'm pretty sure it's expensive everywhere, honestly. so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's been a blessing having having my mother-in-law watch her. We do plan on putting her
Mm.
in daycare eventually, just so she can be able to interact with other kids. So, because I feel like that's very important as well.
Mm. So how have you found the balance of having your mother-in-law kind of doing that role? Because obviously I know some people, when you're hiring someone or
Mhm.
paying someone to look after your children, you kind of have a certain relationship with that person, a certain like employee employer
Yeah.
type relationship. But when you're having a family member like your mother or mother-in-law do that sort of thing, how have you found that relationship?
That's actually a really good question. I actually haven't thought about that. It's become kind of natural. I mean,
That's good.
it doesn't feel like I'm like putting my child on her or anything. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like I like the comfort of knowing that she's in good hands because I mean I know her personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it hasn't been too much of a struggle.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've heard stories from other parents
Mm.
who have like they find it more challenging to kind of set the boundaries of like what they
Mm.
want for their children in terms of
Yeah.
like what they should be eating, what
Mm.
their routines should be, like what sort of activities they should be doing, and they kind of find it more challenging to approach those conversations sometimes when it's like a parent or a grandparent or someone
Yeah.
looking after the child,
Yeah.
because there's certain levels of respect that obviously we provide to the people that are older than us, more senior than us, but then at the same
Yeah.
time, it's your child. So
Yeah.
it's awesome that it's been a nice, smooth transition. That's such a good thing to hear.
Yeah, I will say we do all have pretty good communication, and I mean, we all have the same goal. We just want the best for my child. So
Mm.
as long as that's the mentality we're all going in, try not to be too picky about how we get there. Mm.
Yeah, perfect. You got the main goal in
Yeah,
mind, and you're working towards it.
yeah,
So I wanted to ask, at two, your daughter's at 2 years old.
yeah,
You've kind of gone through a few different stages now.
yeah,
Can you look back and have you had like a favorite time, like a favorite stage of her development? Like, because I know you said to me you've really enjoyed kind of watching her grow and develop.
yeah.
Is there something that kind of stands out to you, like a certain memory you kind of cling to from her
Well,
development?
as far as a favorite time, I mean, honestly, I feel like every era I'm in with my child, I feel like is my favorite. I do
Yeah.
look back at times where she was so little and couldn't really do nothing, and
Mm.
I feel like I miss that. But then I'm like, nah. I mean, right now is pretty great. Right now she's like, I'm a huge music fan. I played a lot of music for her when she was in the womb. So right now she's singing. She's playing instrument. She has a little drum set that she got for her birthday, and she plays that, and that's been amazing to see.
Mm.
And we got her in soccer right now, and she's like picking up on it. I mean, it's really basic. She's just kicking the ball, but
Mm.
it's just fun to see,
Mm.
her play sports and stuff. So yeah, I think right now is probably my favorite. If you ask me a year from now, I'll say that that time I'm in is probably my
Yeah.
favorite. But yeah, just all together watching her develop and learn words and pick up on music, singing songs and stuff. It's been great.
So what songs is she singing at the moment?
She loves the ABC song. She loves Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and
Yeah.
she'll even change up the words to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and she loves the Moana soundtrack.
Oh, okay. Cool.
She loves all the songs on Moana. So yeah.
That's I mean, it's a very cool song, a very cool movie, and also some awesome songs
Honestly,
on that
I had
movie.
never even
I
watched the
love it.
movie prior to prior to
Oh,
her.
cool.
Yeah, she put me onto a lot of kids movies that I didn't watch. So yeah.
Well, naturally, I think. Yeah, my youngest will be 2 in December,
Okay.
and he does the exact same thing
Yeah.
with Twinkle Twinkle and ABC. He'll just be sat at the dinner table and like just mixing between the two, like as he
Yeah.
goes through.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like, we can't even follow what he's doing.
Yeah.
it's just like, what's going on? And because my oldest will be 4 in January,
Okay.
he'll come home from preschool because we live in the Netherlands, and he'll just start teaching the younger one like a song in Dutch, and then they'll just be like babbling and singing this thing. I'm just like, I don't know what's going on, but but yeah, I mean, that's really cool you said that about the favorite stages, because I definitely relate to that. And I think it was really, I've always said that same thing. I was like, I don't miss anything. I don't regret anything. Like where I am right now is my favorite part of them as a person, as a child.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting this week. It was like the very first time that I've like missed something specific, in that I'm sure you can probably relate to this. Like when your child's like up to about 9-10 months, you could just like go for a walk with them. And you just like put them in a buggy, put them in a stroller, and just like walk for like 40 minutes with a podcast in your ears, like enjoying the weather. And they're loving it, just looking at the flowers and the trees and stuff. And they don't need anything else. You just go for a nice walk, and that's super stimulating for them. And I was at the playground, like running after my 2 kids going separate ways, and I just saw this woman like walking her 6-month-old in a buggy. It was like, God, that looks really peaceful right now. I was like, that's the one thing that popped up for me. But
yeah, I can definitely get that. Now it's just like down. I want to walk, and then you definitely got to keep your eye on them when they want to get out the buggy. So
yeah. It's like, we've got a long way to go from here to here. It's like, no, I don't want to be in the buggy. I've got to walk. So can you think of a moment that you were really proud of her? That was one of my other questions.
Man, like I said, we got her in soccer, and just watching her pick up on the small little mini drills that they make her do. It's like, wow, that's my child. Like I saw her from when she couldn't do anything, and now she's like able to kick a ball in the net. You know, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, probably that.
It's interesting seeing them interact with other adults, I've often found.
Yeah.
Because you kind of think like, oh, the way that I interact with them, the way my wife interacts with them, we kind of know what's going to happen. But then you're never sure if when another adult tries to show them something or teach them something, if they're actually going to respond.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, if the coach tries to get them to do something and they actually do it, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
They understand the language. We've done something.
It's very interesting. Like you've never talked to this person your whole life, and they're telling you to do something, and now you're doing it, and that's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah.
You've known me for 2 years. I ask you to do something, and you don't do it at all. Like, what's going on?
I get a no, but yeah, I like it. I like it though.
So you mentioned the terrible twos. What have you found that's been reflected of that? Like, what's she been getting up to on the terrible twos side of things?
Well, like we mentioned before we started recording, bedtime has been a struggle. She doesn't like going to bed at night at all. Fight and sleep has been really bad. And right now we're trying to get into potty training. It goes back and forth. Sometimes she's ready to use the potty, and then sometimes she's like, no, I will not. I refuse. Just and we're at an age where like 2, you can't really sit your child down and explain like, hey, you need to do this or you're going to get hurt, and they'll be like, okay, but nah, they're just they want to find out themselves, like jumping on the couch, tell them no, they're like no, or taking sharp objects from them, and they throw a fit. I'm like, this is for the best. So just stuff like that. That's the rough time right now.
How do you kind of respond? Do you find it easy to keep a level head in those moments that are challenging to the outside?
Yeah, I feel like you have to keep a level head. We try not to raise our voice at her at all, because I mean that's really not going to get you nowhere. And we try to think about, if you raise your voice at your child, they're probably going to end up thinking that's the way to respond when something doesn't go their way. So we try to keep that in mind, even when she is yelling at us for no reason. We still try to keep a level head and just say, hey, no, that's a no, So
yeah. I mean, I think that's what all the books and research and parent podcast people out there would say.
Yeah.
It's just like they're learning their behavior from watching us. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's very true. If there's a conflict, they're going to try and resolve it in the way that they've learned or seen other conflicts resolve. And if they see us do that, it's very true.
yeah,
But it's very cool that you've come to that conclusion. And I mean, I think it's one of those things that I occasionally kind of like struggle with, is like when
yeah,
there's the two of them going crazy,
yeah,
keeping that level head. I've just kind of got to the point of not caring
yeah,
now. Like I just don't care. Like as long as you're safe,
yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm just going to
You
drop down to this
definitely,
level.
you definitely had to pick your battles. If they're
Yeah.
not in danger, they're not really disturbing anybody. Just let her have it. It's fine.
Mm. I mean, even disturbing people, I've even shifted a little bit on that.
Okay.
We were on the tram the other day, and my youngest was like screaming, and all these people were like rolling their eyes and looking at
Yeah.
us. Like about this time last year, if I was in that situation, I would have felt like so self-conscious, and I might have
Hmm.
like got off the tram or the bus or the train or whatever early and walked. But that time I was just like, we're doing our best here.
Yeah.
When we haven't taken him to a library or a nice restaurant, we're not ruining your day.
Yeah.
He's just making a bit of noise. Like it's not
Yeah.
that big a deal.
That's not the only
Um,
noise they're hearing, I'm sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Some people get quite riled up about those sort of things sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, cool. You mentioned something to me about learning how she was allergic to peanuts. Would you like
Yeah.
to tell us that story?
So yeah, it was the day after her first birthday. Apparently, I didn't even realize, but we had never gave her anything with peanut product in it. In it. So we just found these peanut butter snacks at the store, and decided to give her some. Gave her like, I think we gave her one just to see how she reacted. It seemed fine. So I gave her like a little bowl, probably with like 4 or 5 little snacks in there. Then she started scratching her chin, and we already knew she had allergies. So like back when she was 1, her chin was like a little broken out because like allergies and eczema. So her scratching herself wasn't really new, but she started scratching herself really bad to where she started bleeding. So
Wow.
that's when we got really concerned. So we gave her some allergy medicine, and she kept scratching. So we just decided to rush to the hospital real quick.
Mm.
Um, and my wife and her were in the back seat. She was just like kind of holding her, and I was just rushing to the hospital. And then by the time we got out, I hadn't seen her face this whole time. So by the time we got into the hospital, like waiting in line, I see her face for the first time. When we were at home, it looked
Mm.
normal. When we got to the hospital, she had a balloon for her face basically. And
Oh wow.
honestly, I never cried that quick before. Like
I'm
I just
sure.
busted into tears. Like this is my
Mm.
precious child. I've never seen her
Mm.
even really hurt to this point. So that was pretty terrifying. Then we got into the ER, and she was surrounded by a whole bunch of doctors trying to just like get her swelling down and everything. They eventually got it down for the most part. Then the the next day it was pretty much all almost cleared. So they let us go home after that. And
Mm.
so I mean we just found out she was allergic to peanuts the hard way, unfortunately.
Mm.
And now we found out it's only peanuts. We've done some allergy tests and found out it's no tree nut. Or tree nut, she's fine. Everything else, but peanuts is bad. It just sucks finding out that way. I wish we could we could have
Yeah.
found out just by doing some allergy tests or anything. Because
Mm.
nobody that I know is allergic to any foods. It's pretty interesting. Um, I've just never had to deal with food allergies for anybody, and then something so common as peanuts. Makes it a little
Mm.
scary. So I kind of have anxiety about that in the future.
Mm.
Going to hang out with friends or something, and they just give you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and
Yeah.
not know. So it's gives me a little anxiety. I feel like every parent probably has just a little bit of anxiety hanging over them, and
Mm.
that's just another one now. Just knowing that I'm gonna have to put my baby in the world eventually, and she's gonna have to know not to eat anything with peanuts or be around something like that. So, but we'll figure it out. We'll keep an EpiPen on her, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sorry you had to go through that. Like I'm sure that the emotional roller coaster of kind
Yeah,
of going through that must have been really intense.
yeah, definitely.
So can you talk just a little bit more about like the actual hospital stay? Because I think this is something that I think is quite interesting, at least for other people to hear about. Is kind
Yeah,
of, wait, did you like a long wait? Were you seen quickly? Like, were you
we
kind of bumped
were
around a lot? Like, what?
we were seen pretty quickly. Well, my wife and my baby were seen pretty quickly. I had to go into a waiting room for some reason, and apparently they put all the dads in the waiting room. So like
Okay.
we were all in there just miserable because we're all in there for various reasons, you know. Not so I was just waiting for my wife to call me and say like, "Hey, you can come in." Yeah, but like I said, we were seen pretty quickly. I think they probably went in for like 5 minutes after. I was in the waiting room
Okay.
for probably like 15, 20 minutes, so just in there pacing back and forth, wondering what's
Yeah.
going on. Then by the time they let me into the room. Like I said, she's kind of surrounded with doctors. They're injecting her with medicine to get the swelling down. She has like a mask on. This is I hated seeing my daughter like that, you know.
Mm.
But yeah, and then that took about probably like probably like 15 minutes. It felt like forever though because I'm just in there scared for my daughter's life, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, it probably took like 15 minutes, and then we were able to go into another room where the doctor just comes in and checks on us every hour or so just to make sure everything's okay. And like I said, it was an overnight stay. They provided food for us, and the room wasn't too bad. I mean, my wife and I had to share a couch, but other than that, I mean, we were really just making sure making sure she's okay. I didn't care how we were sleeping that night, but yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a lot. It was very overwhelming,
Mm.
but yeah.
It definitely just is that reminder for anyone else to just be wary of the kind of allergy process for a
Yeah,
kid
yeah,
when they're starting to eat food. Um, the closest thing that's similar for us was I've done like one solo episode of this podcast where I shared this story in more detail, where my son was like, he basically just woke up in the middle of the night. It was around about this time last year, and he just couldn't really breathe. He was just like really fighting for his breath,
mm,
like screaming. So we like had to call an ambulance, and the ambulance came, and you can see that what they're trying to do is trying to help where they are, like trying to help here at our house. And then they're
yeah,
like, we can't help because he's fighting everything. He's fighting the mask going on. He's fighting the medicine they're trying to give him.
yeah,
So they take us to the hospital and then put you in the room. And he ended up being discharged that time. But then we had to go back another time when he had a similar problem, but it was less acute. And they kept us in overnight that time. And it got me, these two experiences have like made me be a little bit more prepared
yeah,
for those sorts of things. Like if we have to work out, like there was when I had to stay overnight with him. I'd been at the hospital for ages, like because I'd basically taken him and my youngest to our local doctor, and then the local doctor said you need to go to the hospital. So
mm,
we'd left our house at like in the mid-afternoon, and then we're told we needed to stay overnight. So I didn't have anything with me. So then my wife was back home with the kid, the youngest one, by in the afternoon. When we found out the oldest one had to stay, and she was trying to like find a taxi that could like pick up a bag and take the bag to the hospital to drop it off at us because we just use public transport where we live. And just these little things of like, if I'd just been a tiny bit more prepared, just thought things a little bit more through, things could have been a lot easier at times. Like just like finding my wallet in the middle of the night when like I'm trying to get into this ambulance. Like we've got a lot of IDs and stuff. Um, just these like things that you just like don't think about, and you know have this big panic when like something happens. Like, oh, geez, man, it can be tough. It can be
yeah,
really tough.
yeah.
At that
Especially,
same time, you're seeing your kid like just struggle.
yeah,
Uh, so as you said, you mentioned like she's now having to go out into the world. She now will have this thing,
Yeah.
the allergy to peanuts. How much time do you kind of have to now spend thinking about it? And like, did you do lots of research about it? Like what the next steps are? Or do you try not to think about it? I mean, obviously at the age she's at now, you're kind of controlling all the food she's going to be having.
Yeah, I mean the age that I'm at now, or that she's at now, is easier
Mm.
to control. I mean, I read ingredients on everything that I see in the store now, which I probably
Yeah.
didn't before. When she's with family, everybody knows. Everybody,
Mm.
my side of the family, they live about like 4 hours in a different state in Oklahoma. So she'll spend weeks out there sometimes, and I mean they stay away from anything that's even close to a peanut. They we always keep the EpiPen when she's not with us
Mm.
and when she's with us. So yeah, right now it's pretty easy to control. I haven't put too much thought into like how I'm gonna make sure nothing happens when she's
Mm.
older. Um, yeah, I try not to worry about it. So I haven't put
Yeah,
too much thought
I think
to it.
that's correct.
Yeah, because I'm trying
I
not
think
to
that's the best
worry
thing.
myself for it. Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
really, I'm just hoping that everybody that she's around is just going to be aware, like, hey, nothing like that, you know?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of like worry for now is fine, but
Yeah,
yeah, like years down the line, like there'll be other things that come and go
yeah,
of that need our attention. So we've got to use our attention and our time and our focus on what's important, right? And like right here, right now.
yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask if you identified any kind of change in yourself since your daughter was born. Have you changed at all?
Yeah, I think just my perspective on life has changed. Honestly, I mean, is before having a kid, I used to think like people were being a little over dramatic when they said like, "Oh, becoming a parent changed me." But honestly, like
Yeah,
just
yeah,
even the way I view my parents has changed. Like
mm,
because I know how I feel when I look at my daughter, and I'm like, "Oh, they look at me that way." Like
yeah,
every little thing that I do that they're proud of, like they really mean that because I'm proud of my daughter just doing really simple stuff. So,
yeah,
uh, so yeah, my perspective on life has changed. Um, my motivation at work has been been increased. Um, the way I look at my wife after giving birth has changed. I mean, I already loved and respected her, but I didn't know there was another level. But we reached
mm,
another level after watching her
yeah,
give birth for sure. But yeah, even with like I mentioned my podcast, I feel like I took that a lot more serious after having a child because it's like I kind of want. I mean, I want to be the most successful person I can now because I have a family to provide for, and I want to
mm,
make my daughter proud. So yeah,
mm. Yeah, that's awesome. I totally resonate with what you said about your wife because I feel like I haven't heard this much from husbands and dads, but yeah, like I remember the very first moment, like after my first son was born, the overwhelming feeling I had was just like, like wow, like
yeah,
what did you just do? Like I'm amazed, like I'm in awe that you were like that you've done this, like this laborious and like enduring thing that's like
yeah,
drained so much from you, but you've like come through it.
yeah,
And I was just like in total awe of my wife and like when like, the baby was born, and obviously
yeah.
preceding things happen like with the baby and what have you, but that was my very first feeling. So it's interesting you said that because I haven't really heard it much
Oh yeah,
from other dads.
yeah,
um but no, I totally resonate with that. So uh we often ask the dads on the show to try and think back to the times before the baby was born, their very first child.
hmm
um would you have any advice for Mike from just over 2 years ago, about to welcome his daughter into the world? Do you think that man needed to hear anything?
just appreciate um, every moment, like even when times seem like hard when you feel like you're getting no rest or anything, or getting no sleep, or the baby's just crying. Just appreciate it because it goes by super fast. Yeah, I didn't realize how fast time goes until you have a child and you look up and now she's 2. So yeah, just appreciate every moment.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree with that. So why don't we just close off? You can tell us a little bit more about your podcast, what you do there, and where people can find you.
Oh yeah, it's the Right on Target podcast. Like I mentioned before, we talk about sports like basketball, American football. We talk about music as well. We put out episodes every Friday. Myself and my co-host Justin. If you're into sports and music, I suggest checking it out. It's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, everywhere you get podcasts. So,
Yeah, I'll put some links up in the description.
yeah, and we're Right on Target Pod on Instagram and TikTok and pretty much everywhere. So, yeah. but I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no worries. And I'm just curious, your kind of like approach to the podcast. You mentioned that you took it more seriously when your daughter came because you want to be good at it. So, how do you kind of find the time, and how do you kind of like process and make time to fit it into your schedule? Like, how important is it from that aspect?
Yeah, so I go to the studio every week, and I'm very blessed that my wife is willing to deal with a 2-year-old by herself every week. I'm lucky, but when I get home, I have a creative brain, and it doesn't really shut off. I try not to do too much while I'm with the family. If you ask my wife, I probably do too much while I'm with the family. Like I'm always just thinking of creative ways of making graphics or something on my phone. But I try to make sure I'm setting that aside sometimes and just focusing on what I have in front of me. But I mean, it's a balance being a creative and a dad. I'm sure you can relate. I'm sure you're.
I think it's so important, like, because I think I've spoken to loads of dads that like, and mums even, like, that you need to find that thing that you want to spend the time on during the week that is like for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going and doing shopping or doing chores or, doing the cooking for the family, like whatever. Like, you've got to find that thing in your week that you can like get something out of, put your time and effort into, invest in, and like that's when like you need to offer the time to your partner as well to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And then you're happy world when everyone's like challenging themselves and investing in themselves.
Yeah.
But it's cool you've got that studio space to go and do it. I did watch one of your episodes and I was like, oh, this is cool. You've got your own little space.
Yeah, appreciate it.
To go and do that.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, Mike, thanks so much for joining us today. It was lovely talking to you. And I'll put all those stuff in the description for everyone to check you out. So thanks so much for coming on the show. Cool,
man. Thank you for having me. This has been a blast. This is my first appearance on another podcast. I'm
glad to have you on. Yeah, glad to have welcome you onto your first guesting.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great though. I appreciate it.
And there we have another Dad Dialogue conversation. Of course, a huge thank you goes out to Mike for coming on the show and sharing his stories with us. As we spoke about in the episode, you can go check out Mike at his podcast, Right on Target. I'll put all the links up in the description if you're interested in checking that out. But I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I really found it interesting just kind of connecting with Mike on these different levels of being a proud father and a proud husband. And as I mentioned in the intro, I hope that some of you did take that step to action to watch the video on YouTube, and I hope you'll agree with me that Mike just has this beaming, infectious smile that's so lovely to watch as he's talking about his family, and it's really inspired me to really just kind of like take a moment and just think about some of these things as we think about parenting, that we can sometimes overcomplicate things sometimes, and really just taking a little pause and like appreciating and being proud of the members of our family is such an amazing thing to do. So I really did enjoy talking to Mike and going back over this episode and editing it. It was such a lovely process to do. So yeah, if you want to check them out, links are in the description. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Dad Dialogue podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me, share your feedback, you can go on the website, daddialogue.co.uk, or go over to Instagram at Dad Dialogue. I really would love to hear from you. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to talk to you again soon. Goodbye.